Hey guys, welcome back. This is my own PC. I'm gonna put the specs up here for you if anyone's curious. But it's a mini ITX system, all in a metallic gear Neo Mini V2 case. I also have a 240 millimeter AIO for cooling, as you can see. Although I don't think that's going to be in there much longer. It's starting to give me trouble again. But anyways, my goal today is to clean this up and swap out these mismatched fans, and also to add an RGB controller to make everything a little bit more cohesive. As you can see, none of the three case fans are matching. The case is pretty large for mini ITX, but still the parts I have are pretty cramped in there. The GPU is massive, and the hoses from the AIO are practically sitting right on it. And as you can see, the front fans are pretty tight to the radiator as well. So let's check out the parts I plan on adding to it now. First up is a Razer Chroma addressable RGB controller. This should be a big help in syncing everything up. Even if it's not compatible with Gigabyte motherboards, I have a plan for that too. And once I get this box open, we find two packages, some directions, and two sweet stickers if you're into that sort of thing. And the first package contains our cables. It looks like a USB 2.0 header connector and a Molex power connector. And apparently, it seems Razer states that they need Molex due to the power draw. I guess this unit can apparently power an awful lot of RGB. And the second package contains the actual controller and some adhesive tape, since this is completely non-magnetic. And there are three 3-pin addressable RGB connectors on each side for a total of six, and power and data connections on one end. And if this thing works at all, it's going to be miles ahead of the Zalman Z-Sync controller, which literally does not work. And speaking of Zalman, these are the fans that I bought to replace my mismatched trio, and these are actually $7.99 a piece. These are the Zalman LF120 120 millimeter fans with PWM and addressable RGB. According to the specs, they have a max RPM of 1300, so they should be nice and quiet as well. I haven't taken a look at these yet, so I'm quite curious what you get for $7.99. All right, first impression is really not bad. They include the Gigabyte adapter cable and four black screws with each fan, and that's got to be worth a buck alone right there. And the fans do have a 4-pin PWM connector as well as a separate 3-pin ARGB connector, so I would consider that pretty premium in itself. And as far as the fan itself, appearance-wise, it looks and feels a little bit cheap, but I do have to award points for the design as well as adding rubber vibration dampeners. Honestly, I don't need much from these. They need to pull some cool air into the case, exhaust some warm air out the back, and as well as have a working RGB implementation. And one of the biggest issues I have is there are three case fans along with two radiator fans and a pump, and with only two fan headers total on the motherboard. So right now I have a few splitters stuffed in there to help get everything working, but I think I found a better solution. This is a 5-port PWM hub, and this is going to allow me to eliminate the extra splitter cables. I have one for the case fans and one for the CPU cooling. Interestingly enough, they have ASUS branding on them, but you can see they're pretty compact with an adhesive strip already applied to the back. The way this works is the supplied cable connects to it and the other end goes to your motherboard's PWM header. The first fan gives the RPM signal to the PWM controller, and four more fans can be attached as well. And we have a bit of work to do on the back here, untying and sorting wires to remove the old fans, but we also have to find a spot for the PWM hubs. I think right here is a perfect spot for one of them, as I keep my wires somewhat organized as they make their way to it. The second one, though, is going to be a little tricky, since I don't want to put anything in the way of the radiator airflow, and space is obviously pretty limited. But I guess I can figure that out as I go. Meantime, I need to start pulling these old fans and splitters. And I just discovered how much cable they give you with these Zalman fans, which, I would rather have more than less, and these seem to have plenty. I did run into one issue, however, and it's the thickness of these fans. If I compare it to one of the other fans, it's about an eighth of an inch thicker, which makes fitting them in just that much tighter. And screwing them to the case is a little unnerving too. The whole fan frame flexes, and you worry you're going to break the attaching leg off. And now you can see everything installed, and everything seems to work. RGB works, fans work, but you can see each individual LED around the fan. And for some, that might be a deal breaker. For me, not so much. I don't generally use RGB. I just set it to sync with music, so it actually adds to the effect for me. But I thought I would mention that to anyone that was considering these. And the RAM and motherboard sync perfectly with the fans now as well, thanks to the Razer hub. But really, no credit to the Razer Synapse software. I'm using something else that I'm going to go over a little bit later. Okay, so with everything installed, it all fit with minor issues only. The front case fans are now actually touching the radiator fans due to the extra thickness, but it doesn't impede their function at all, so I'm okay with that. The bottom right section of the motherboard is where the majority of headers are, so that really simplified things a bit as well. And the GPU draws its cool air in from the bottom vent of the case, so there really isn't a way to manage cables at the bottom either. While you'll never be able to see the fans from the front of the case, the design actually looks pretty decent. And I guess you'd call that a frameless look. That would probably really stand out in a glass front case. And these posts are what gave me concern when I was attaching them. The whole frame was flexing as I was tightening up the screws, so I just held onto these posts really tight while I finished off the screws. There is a little blockage from the radiator fans, but not enough to make me worry about it. And moving to the back of the case, you can see everything tidied up pretty nicely. Nothing impeded the radiator, and this spot actually worked out perfect for this PWM hub. The three case fans are all attached here, and the hub is powered from the single case fan PWM connector on the motherboard. And you can just see the second PWM hub under here, where the pump and radiator fans are attached. It actually turned out to be a good spot for it, despite being buried in the end. These cables were packed in here pretty tightly before, but even more so now that I had to add another cable for the Molex to power the RGB hub. SATA power would have been nice since I already have a spare connector right here, but instead we now have a Molex connector buried in there somewhere. But overall, it actually came out pretty clean, and the rear cover still fits. So you're probably wondering, where did I hide the Razer RGB controller? Well, there was only one spot left that it could go. That real estate on the top turned out to be perfect, keeping it right out of the way. And with the side panel and front panel installed, it's almost complete. The fans, RAM, and motherboard completely synced up. Really makes it feel complete now. So if Razer isn't compatible with Gigabyte's RGB, then how did I get it all to sync? Well, I used an open source software called OpenRGB by a guy named Adam Hans, and I'm going to link it below if any of you want to check it out. It also works with Linux too. Here you can see OpenRGB detected everything no problem, and you can pretty much control your RGB, even each individual LED from this tab here. The amount of control you have is just pretty insane. And the second tab is just info about the software, web link, etc. And the settings tab is naturally where all your settings will be, including plugins, Philips Hue devices, and pretty much all your other settings. The plugins tab under settings not only shows your installed plugins, but is where you can also install plugins very easily after you've downloaded them. And finally, the effects tab, which is where all your different effects from the effects plugin can be accessed and tweaked. For instance, you can select Bubbles effect. Make sure you have your devices selected on the right that you want to use that effect on, and then just start the effect. You can tweak everything from the speed and colors used to background as well as visual settings to the effect. I know the LEDs look a bit bright recorded, but hopefully you can get the idea. Alright, hopefully that's a little bit better. Alright, let's check out a different effect. We'll select moving panes, select all devices, and start. It immediately switches, and we can make adjustments here as well for this effect if we want to. To give you a quick example of it, controlling each device separately, we're going to pick the rain effect and start it, and you can see how it uses each device separately, including each fan. Overall, I'm very happy with the combination of the Razer controller and the OpenRGB software. But as I said earlier, I only use the RGB for audio sync. If I'm playing music for some games, things like that. I do prefer the shader effect, but there are also other audio sync options in the menu as well. There are actually a lot of options under the shaders drop down menu too, so deciding is usually the hardest part. I'll go through a couple of them quick just to give you an idea. All right, I guess I should wrap this up. This is supposed to be a quick video, but I guess I was expecting a bit much. But I do got to say, I'm very happy with the result. The Razer controller actually works extremely well and is supported by OpenRGB, so that made life so much easier. And as much as I like the controller, I'm not a fan of the Razer software, so not needing to use that is a huge bonus. And the fans for $7.99 each are actually very impressive. They work as a fan naturally. I mean, I obviously wouldn't put them on a cooler or radiator, but they do move air. And having a decent RGB implementation, along with nice cable lengths for the separate PWM and 5-volt RGB cables, that's very nice for the price. The PWM hub's very nice to have, much easier than splitter cables when you have no extra room to hide cables. So yeah, I'm definitely very pleased with the way it came out. So I'm going to wrap this up. I'm sure you guys have things to do as well. You guys take care, and I'll see you again sometime.